I am Stella, 34, the middle child who always felt like I was reaching for approval that was just out of grasp. Despite minimal support from my family, I built a successful career as a financial advisor, helping others secure their futures, while my own family security was uncertain. Last summer, at what should have been a routine family gathering, I discovered my parents planned to give my inheritance from Grandma Ruth to my younger sister Amanda. After years of feeling inadequate, I never imagined what would happen next. Before I tell you how I discovered my parents' secret plan, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever felt overlooked by your family. Growing up in our suburban Connecticut home, I always knew where I stood in the family hierarchy. My father, Richard, was a workaholic corporate attorney who expected perfection, and my mother, Diana, was a meticulous homemaker who micromanaged our lives with precision. Our upper middle class lifestyle came with expectations that each of us would fulfill specific roles in maintaining the family image. My older brother, James, was the golden boy following in our father's footsteps toward a prestigious law career. 3 years younger than me, my sister Amanda was the baby of the family, the princess who could do no wrong. And then there was me, stuck in the middle, constantly striving for a sliver of the attention that seemed to flow so naturally to my siblings. The pattern of favoritism started early. I can still remember my 10th birthday when my parents scheduled an important meeting during my small celebration, but cleared their entire weekend for Amanda's elaborate party a month later. At school award ceremonies, my academic achievements were treated as expected, while Amanda's participation awards received enthusiastic praise. "That's nice, Stella," became my mother's standard response to my accomplishments, followed by a quick pivot to something Amanda or James had done. When I brought home straight A's in advanced classes, my father merely nodded, but when Amanda managed to pull her grades up to B's, they took the whole family out for an expensive dinner to celebrate. My high school graduation was another painful memory. While James had received a new car for his graduation, and Amanda was already being promised a European trip for hers, my parents gave me a department store gift card and practical luggage for college. The message was clear: make your own way. Grandma Ruth was the only one who seemed to see me for who I was. My father's mother lived an hour away, and I often spent weekends with her during my teenage years, escaping the constant feeling of inadequacy at home. "You know, Stella," Grandma Ruth told me during one of our late-night conversations when I was 16, "sometimes the strongest people are forged in the shadows. Your parents do not see your strength yet, but I do." She would make me tea in her antique china cups and listen intently as I shared my dreams of studying finance rather than law, which had triggered another argument with my father. "Your father believes security comes from following the established path," she explained gently, "but true security comes from following your heart and building something that belongs to you alone. Stand your ground, my dear." Throughout high school, I poured myself into academics and extracurricular activities, partly to build my college applications, but mostly to create spaces where I could shine on my own terms. I joined the investment club and discovered a genuine talent for understanding market trends. While my parents remained fixated on James's debate team victories and Amanda's social popularity, I was laying the groundwork for my future independence. When college application time came, my parents pushed hard for me to apply to my father's alma mater for pre-law. Instead, I secretly applied to several schools with strong business and finance programs. When the acceptance letters came in, including a partial scholarship to my top choice, I finally stood my ground. "I am going to study finance," I told them over dinner, my voice shaking but determined. "I have already accepted the offer." My father's face darkened with disappointment. "That's a waste of your potential, Stella. Law is a respected profession with security." "Finance is what I'm good at," I replied, "and it's what I love. If that's what you want to settle for." My mother sighed, exchanging a look with my father that spoke volumes about their disappointment. That night, I called Grandma Ruth in tears, and her response gave me the strength to pack my bags. "My darling girl," she said warmly, "today you chose yourself. That is always the right choice." The emotional distance between my parents and me grew wider after that decision. They paid the portion of my tuition not covered by scholarships, but it was clear they considered it an obligation rather than an investment in my future. Meanwhile, they fully funded James's law school and later Amanda's frequent changes of major as she found herself through 5 years of undergraduate studies. During family gatherings, I watched as my accomplishments were consistently downplayed while my siblings were celebrated. Grandma Ruth was always my champion, though keeping a special scrapbook of my achievements that my parents never bothered to track. She attended my college graduation when my parents claimed they could only make it for the dinner afterward due to an important social engagement earlier in the day. "They are missing the best parts of you," Grandma Ruth whispered as she hugged me after the ceremony, slipping a beautiful vintage necklace into my hand. "But I see all of you, Stella, and you shine so brightly." Those words sustained me through years of family dynamics that continually reinforced my place as the overlooked middle child. Little did I know that this pattern would eventually culminate in an attempt to take what was rightfully mine and give it to the daughter they had always favored. My college years marked the beginning of my true independence. I threw myself into my finance courses, finding genuine satisfaction in understanding the complexities of markets investments and wealth management. While my parents showed minimal interest in my academic journey, I was building the foundation for a career I would genuinely love. Sophomore year brought an unexpected blessing into my life when I met Marcus in an economics class. Tall, thoughtful, and with a quiet confidence I found instantly attractive, he noticed me in a way my family never had. Our study sessions evolved into coffee dates, and by junior year we were inseparable. "You light up when you talk about investment strategies," he observed one evening as we worked on a project together. "It's like watching someone speak their native language." When Marcus came home with me for Thanksgiving during our junior year, he witnessed my family dynamics firsthand. After dinner, as we took a walk around the neighborhood, he gently brought up what he had observed. "I noticed something," he said carefully. "Your parents asked James about every detail of law school and spent 20 minutes discussing Amanda's study abroad plans, but they barely asked about your internship at the investment firm." I smiled sadly, used to the pattern. Welcome to my world. I stopped expecting them to be interested a long time ago. His forehead creased with concern. "That doesn't make it right, Stella. You deserve to be seen and valued." Those words struck a chord so deep that I had to blink back tears. Being truly seen by Marcus made the invisibility I felt at home more bearable. He became my strongest supporter, celebrating every achievement my family overlooked. After graduation, I secured a position at a respected financial advisory firm in Boston, deliberately choosing a city 3 hours from my parents. Marcus found work as a data analyst at a tech company nearby, and we began building our life together, independent of my family's shadow. Within 4 years, I had built a solid reputation at the firm, developing a specialty in helping young professionals establish strong financial foundations. I found deep satisfaction in empowering clients to understand their financial options and build security for their futures, perhaps because I understood so intimately what it felt like to lack support. When Marcus and I decided to buy our first home, I had saved enough for a modest down payment through careful planning and my growing success at work. We found a charming 3-bedroom townhouse that needed some renovations, but had excellent potential. During a Sunday phone call with my mother, I mentioned our house hunting success. "That's nice, dear," she responded without enthusiasm. "Did you hear that we are helping Amanda with the down payment on her condo?" Such a relief since she is still figuring out her career path after that gallery job didn't work out. I wasn't surprised to hear that Amanda, who had cycled through 3 different careers in the past 4 years, was receiving financial assistance, while my achievement of saving for a home while paying student loans received barely a nod of acknowledgement. It was consistent with the pattern established throughout our lives. Marcus and I married in a small, meaningful ceremony the following year. My parents attended with polite smiles, but left early to accommodate another engagement. Amanda brought her latest boyfriend arrived late and managed to give a slightly intoxicated toast that was more about her memories of childhood than about Marcus and me. Grandma Ruth, though, traveled despite her arthritis acting up, and her presence was a balm. A marriage built on mutual respect and genuine seeing of each other will weather any storm, she told us during the reception, her eyes bright with emotion. You two have that foundation. As our careers progressed, I was promoted to senior financial advisor, while Marcus moved into management at his company. We created a chosen family of close friends who provided the emotional support my biological family rarely offered. Jasmine, a colleague who became my closest confidant, and Thomas, our neighbor, who shared Marcus's love of hiking, became regular fixtures at our dinner table and holiday celebrations. Meanwhile, Amanda continued her pattern of professional inconstancy, moving between art gallery assistant marketing coordinator, yoga instructor, and eventually landing at a friend's startup in a nebulously defined creative role. Despite her unstable career path, my parents continued to provide financial support, helping with rent when jobs ended, and funding her frequent career development courses. When Amanda's second serious relationship ended in a dramatic breakup, my parents paid for her month-long healing retreat in Arizona. When I called to check on her afterward, her response was telling. Mom and Dad said I should take all the time I need to recover and find myself, she explained. They're covering my bills until I'm ready to work again. I couldn't help contrasting this with the time I had pneumonia during my first year at the firm, and pushed myself back to work after 1 week because I couldn't afford more unpaid time off. When I had mentioned struggling, my father had simply said, "That's the real world, Stella. You wanted independence." Through all these years, I maintained a cordial relationship with my parents and siblings, calling regularly and attending family gatherings. I had accepted that I would never receive the same level of emotional or financial support as my siblings, particularly Amanda. I had Marcus, my friends, my career, and Grandma Ruth's unwavering belief in me. It was enough, I told myself. As Grandma Ruth entered her 80s, her health began to decline. She had been widowed for over a decade, living comfortably on the substantial inheritance from my grandfather's successful manufacturing business. During my weekly visits to her home, I noticed her becoming increasingly concerned about family dynamics. I worry about what will happen, she confided during one of our tea sessions, her hand slightly trembling as she held her cup. Your father has always had blind spots when it comes to fairness. I assumed she was speaking generally about family relationships, not realizing she was concerned about something much more specific. I could never have predicted how her passing would bring those blind spots into sharp, painful focus. The call came on a rainy Tuesday morning. Grandma Ruth had passed away peacefully in her sleep at 84. Despite preparing myself for this inevitability as her health declined, the grief hit me like a physical blow. I lost not just my grandmother, but my most consistent supporter, the one person in my family who truly saw me. The family gathered at her colonial-style home in Massachusetts 3 days later. My parents arrived first to make arrangements with James, flying in from Chicago, where he had become partner at a prestigious law firm. Amanda drove up from New York, where she was between jobs again, after her latest startup venture had folded. The funeral was lovely and dignified, exactly as Grandma Ruth would have wanted. I spoke briefly about her wisdom and unwavering support, my voice breaking, as I shared how she had taught me to value myself, even when others didn't see my worth. My parents looked uncomfortable during this part of my eulogy, while Amanda scrolled through her phone in the front row. After the service, we gathered at Grandma Ruth's house, where her attorney Michael would be joining us to discuss her will. Grandma Ruth had accumulated significant wealth through my grandfather's business investments and her own shrewd financial management. While we all knew she was comfortable, the extent of her estate was substantial enough to raise eyebrows when Michael provided a general overview. I excused myself to use the restroom, needing a moment alone with my grief. As I returned through the hallway, I heard my parents' voices coming from Grandma Ruth's study. The door was ajar, and I instinctively slowed my steps. Richard, we need to discuss how to handle Stella's portion, my mother was saying in a hushed tone. You know Ruth changed her mind about the equal distribution before she passed. My father's response made my blood run cold. We will explain to Michael that Mother told us she wanted Amanda to receive Stella's share. With her career struggles and the divorce, Amanda needs the financial support more than Stella does. Stella has always been self-sufficient, my mother agreed. And we already promised Amanda she would get extra help from Ruth's estate. She's counting on it for her new business idea. I stood frozen, unable to believe what I was hearing. They were planning to redirect my inheritance to Amanda, fabricating a verbal change of wishes that Grandma Ruth had never made. In that moment, decades of being overlooked crystallized into a sharp, unbearable pain. We will just explain that Mother verbally amended her wishes. My father continued, his tone matter of fact. As executor, I have some discretion, and Michael has always been amenable to our family's needs. I must have made a sound because the conversation abruptly stopped. I quickly moved away from the door and into the kitchen, my mind reeling. Marcus found me there immediately, noticing my pale face and shaking hands. "What happened?" He asked, his arms steady around my shoulders. I could barely form the words. "They are going to take my inheritance and give it to Amanda. They are going to lie about Grandma Ruth's wishes." Marcus's expression hardened in a way I'd rarely seen. "They can't do that." "My father is the executor," I whispered, "and they already promised it to Amanda." The family dinner that evening was excruciating. I watched my parents closely, noting how they lavished attention on Amanda's grief while barely acknowledging mine, despite my much closer relationship with Grandma Ruth. I observed Amanda's casual mentions of financial plans that would require significant capital, catching the knowing looks my parents exchanged. I was faced with an impossible choice: confront them immediately, based solely on an overheard conversation, or gather more information before taking action. The familiar pattern of swallowing my hurt in order to keep peace in the family pulled at me, but a new resolve was forming. Grandma Ruth had always encouraged me to stand my ground, and this would be the ultimate test of that lesson. That night, in the guest room of what had been my grandmother's home, I made a decision. Before confronting my parents, I needed to speak with Michael privately. If my grandmother had indeed wanted to change her will, he would know. And if not, I would need his help to ensure her true wishes were honored. "I'll go with you," Marcus said when I told him my plan. "Whatever happens, you're not facing this alone." The cold calculation of my parents' plan kept me awake most of the night. It wasn't just about the money, though the amount was substantial. It was the realization that they thought so little of me, valued me so much less than my sister, that they would deliberately undermine my grandmother's wishes and take what she had intended for me. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel not just hurt, but genuine anger at the pattern of favoritism that had shaped my entire life. Grandma Ruth had seen my worth even when my parents couldn't, and I would not let her final expression of that love be redirected to satisfy their unequal vision of family. The following morning, I called Michael's office while my parents were occupied with relatives who had come to pay their respects. His secretary, recognizing the urgency in my voice, squeezed me in for an appointment that afternoon. Marcus and I slipped away from the house, telling my mother we needed some time alone to process our grief. Michael's office was in a historic building in downtown Springfield, the kind of established wood-paneled space that spoke of generations of trust. He greeted me warmly, having known me since childhood through my grandmother. "Stella, I am so sorry for your loss," he said sincerely. "Your grandmother was extraordinarily proud of you." I took a deep breath, feeling Marcus's supportive presence beside me. "Michael, I need to ask you something directly, and I need complete honesty. Did my grandmother ever express a desire to change her will regarding my inheritance, particularly in favor of my sister Amanda?" Michael's bushy eyebrows rose in surprise. "Absolutely not. In fact, quite the contrary." He opened a file on his desk. "Ruth was exceptionally clear about her wishes. The bulk of her estate is to be divided equally among her 3 grandchildren, with specific provisions. She never wavered on that point." Relief washed over me, followed quickly by renewed anger at my parents' intended deception. "There's more you should know." Michael continued, pulling out a sealed envelope. "Your grandmother anticipated there might be some disagreement about her wishes. She left this letter for you specifically with instructions that I should give it to you privately after her passing." My hands trembled as I took the envelope, recognizing Grandma Ruth's elegant handwriting, addressing it simply to "My dear Stella." "She also left you her entire jewelry collection," Michael added. She was quite insistent about that. Said you were the only one who truly appreciated the stories behind each piece. I opened the letter carefully, tears blurring my vision as I read. My dearest Stella, if you are reading this, I am gone, but my love for you remains. Throughout your life, I have watched you navigate the challenging dynamics of our family with grace and resilience. I have seen the hurt in your eyes when your achievements were overlooked, and the strength in your spirit as you built your own path anyway. I fear your father may try to impose his own sense of family need in distributing my estate. He has approached me several times suggesting that Amanda should receive a larger portion due to her unstable situation. I have refused these suggestions, but I know how persistent he can be. My wishes are clear. In my legal will, you, James, and Amanda are to receive equal shares. Additionally, I want you to have my jewelry collection, not just for its monetary value, but because each piece carries a story of a woman who made her own choices just as you have. Stand firm in what is rightfully yours, my darling girl. You have always had to fight harder for recognition in this family, but know that I have seen you clearly and loved you completely. All my love, Grandma Ruth. Tears streamed down my face as Marcus read the letter over my shoulder, his arm tightening around me. Did my father approach you about changing the distribution? I asked Michael, wiping my eyes. Michael nodded grimly. Several times over the past few months, including the week before Ruth passed. She was quite disturbed by his persistence, and made me promise to ensure her actual wishes were carried out regardless of any family pressure. He shuffled through more papers. In fact, she took additional legal steps. She created a specific trust structure that prevents the executor from redirecting funds. Your father has limited discretion as executor, despite what he might believe. I felt a wave of gratitude for my grandmother's foresight. What about claims of verbal amendments? Completely inadmissible in this case, Michael assured me. Ruth explicitly addressed this in her will, stating that any changes must be properly documented and witnessed. She was very thorough. As we left Michael's office, I felt both vindicated and devastated. My grandmother had anticipated my parents' attempt to disinherit me. The painful reality that this behavior was so predictable, she had taken legal precautions against it, was almost too much to bear. Over the next few days, I began gathering evidence of the pattern of favoritism that had culminated in this attempted financial manipulation. Marcus helped me compile old emails and text messages showing the disparity in how my parents treated their children. I recovered financial records documenting the additional support given to Amanda over the years while I had made my own way. I also contacted my friend Priya, who practiced family law, for additional perspective on the situation. They have no legal ground to stand on, she confirmed after reviewing the documentation Michael had provided with my permission. But be prepared for emotional manipulation. From what you've told me, that's their usual approach when you assert boundaries. The more evidence I gathered, the clearer the pattern became. This wasn't an isolated incident, but the culmination of a lifetime of unequal treatment. I thought of all the times I had diminished my own needs and achievements to keep family peace, all the moments I had accepted being less valued than my siblings. With Grandma Ruth gone, something fundamental had shifted inside me. The letter she had left validated what I had felt, but never fully acknowledged the treatment I had received was unfair, and I deserved better. Her final gift to me wasn't just the inheritance she had protected, but the permission to finally stand up for myself. James arrived from Chicago the day before the official will reading, and I made the decision to speak with him privately. Though we had never been especially close, I needed to know if he was part of my parents' plan. We met for coffee at a small cafe away from the family house. When I carefully described what I had overheard, his genuine shock confirmed he had no knowledge of our parents' intentions. "That's unconscionable," he said, his attorney's vocabulary emerging in his anger. Ruth would never have wanted that. His immediate support surprised and touched me. Perhaps in his own way secure in his position as the eldest and most accomplished by our parents' standards, he had never fully recognized the extent of the favoritism toward Amanda. "I'll back you up," he promised. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you won't stand alone." As I prepared for the official will reading, I felt a strange calm replacing the hurt and anxiety. For the first time in my life, I was fully prepared to challenge the family narrative that had cast me as less deserving, less important, less worthy of investment than my siblings. Grandma Ruth had seen my worth clearly, and now, finally, so did I. The next morning, the family gathered in Michael's office for the official reading of the will. My parents sat stiffly in leather chairs, my father projecting confidence, while my mother nervously adjusted her pearl necklace. Amanda lounged beside them, scrolling through her phone until Michael cleared his throat pointedly. James sat next to me with Marcus on my other side, a united front I never expected, but deeply appreciated. Michael began by outlining the general structure of Grandma Ruth's estate, which was even more substantial than I had realized. Before he could proceed to the specific distributions, my father interrupted. "Before we continue," he said with practiced authority, "I should mention that my mother verbally amended some of her wishes in her final weeks. As her executor, I want to ensure these changes are respected." Michael paused, his expression neutral, but his eyes sharp. "What specific amendments are you referring to, Richard?" My father launched into a carefully constructed narrative about how Grandma Ruth had expressed concerns about the equal distribution, particularly regarding my portion. According to him, she had wanted Amanda to receive a larger share due to her greater financial need and unstable career situation. "Stella is established in her career and marriage," my mother added supportively. "Ruth recognized that Amanda needs more support to find her footing." I watched Amanda nod solemnly, though I caught the slight smirk she couldn't quite suppress. She had always expected to be prioritized and saw nothing wrong with this arrangement. Michael listened without expression, then looked at me. "Stella, you seem to have something to say." Taking a deep breath, I spoke clearly and calmly. "That directly contradicts what Grandma Ruth told me, as well as the legal documents she prepared. I find it difficult to believe she would tell you one thing and me another." My father's face hardened. "You were always her favorite, Stella. She indulged your feelings, but she understood family needs practically. As executor, I have some discretion in interpreting her intentions." "Actually," Michael interjected, "Ruth was quite explicit about her wishes both in our discussions and in her legal documents. She anticipated potential disagreements and took steps to ensure clarity." James leaned forward. "I'd like to understand exactly what documentation exists regarding these supposed verbal amendments." My father shot him a surprised look, clearly expecting his support rather than his skepticism. As Michael began to outline the actual legal provisions of the will, confirming the equal three-way split with additional specific bequests, I watched my parents exchange increasingly concerned glances. Their plan was unraveling before it had even fully launched. When Michael mentioned the special provision leaving Grandma Ruth's entire jewelry collection specifically to me, Amanda's composure broke. "That's not fair," she exclaimed. "I should get the jewelry." "I'm the one who always complimented her on it." "Ruth was explicit about this bequest," Michael replied evenly. "She noted that Stella alone appreciated the history and significance of each piece." The tension in the room escalated as Michael continued explaining the trust structures Ruth had established that specifically prevented any executor interference with the distributions. My father's face grew increasingly flushed as he realized the extent to which his mother had anticipated and blocked his potential manipulations. When Michael finished the formal reading, my father immediately began objecting, his voice rising. "This doesn't reflect Mother's true final wishes. She verbally expressed different intentions to Diana and me." "That's not true," I said quietly but firmly. "And I believe you know that." All eyes turned to me. "I overheard you and Mom discussing your plan to redirect my inheritance to Amanda." I continued, my voice gaining strength. "You specifically mentioned fabricating a story about Grandma changing her mind." My mother gasped. "How dare you accuse us of such a thing? We are simply trying to honor your grandmother's wishes." "Are you?" I asked, reaching into my bag to withdraw the letter Grandma Ruth had left me. "Because Grandma was concerned enough about potential manipulation that she left me this." I began reading portions of the letter aloud, including the direct reference to my father's attempts to convince Ruth to change her will in Amanda's favor. With each word, my father's face grew darker, while my mother's crumpled in dismay. You kept a private letter from the rest of the family, Amanda accused, trying to shift focus from the damning content to my actions. It was addressed to me, I replied simply. And given what I've just learned, Grandma Ruth was right to be concerned. James, ever the attorney, focused on the practical aspects. So, to be absolutely clear, Michael, these alleged verbal amendments have no legal standing whatsoever. None, Michael confirmed. Even if such conversations had occurred, which based on my extensive discussions with Ruth, I find highly doubtful they would not override the clear written instructions she left. Amanda suddenly burst into tears, a tactic that had served her well throughout our childhood. I was counting on that money. I have plans for a new business, and Mom and Dad promised me I would have enough from Grandma's estate to fund it. They promised you my share, I clarified, no longer willing to soften the truth. Money that Grandma Ruth intended for me. You've always been jealous of me. Amanda shot back, her tears mysteriously gone. You have a job and a husband. What more do you want? I'm still trying to build my life. At 31, I questioned, with continuous financial support from our parents that I never received. This isn't about jealousy, Amanda. It's about honoring Grandma Ruth's wishes and acknowledging a lifetime of unequal treatment. My father stood abruptly. I will not be spoken to this way. As executor, I have the final say. Actually, Michael intervened firmly, you don't. Ruth anticipated this exact scenario and structured her will accordingly. Any attempt to deviate from her explicit written instructions would constitute executor malfeasance, which has serious legal consequences I'm sure James can elaborate on. James nodded grimly. Significant ones. The realization that they had no legal recourse slowly dawned on my parents' faces. My mother attempted a different approach. Stella, darling, surely you can see that your sister needs this more than you do, Pix. Family should support each other. Your grandmother would want us all to be taken care of. Yes, she would, I agreed. That's precisely why she left equal shares to all three of her grandchildren, while recognizing that I might need additional protection from manipulation. I looked directly at my parents, years of suppressed hurt and anger finally finding voice. All my life, I've watched you give Amanda everything while I worked twice as hard for half the recognition. I accepted it because I loved you and wanted your approval. But this crosses a line I can't ignore. Grandma Ruth saw me when you didn't value me when you couldn't, and I will not dishonor her memory by allowing you to take what she specifically wanted me to have. A heavy silence fell over the room. James surprised me by placing his hand supportively on my shoulder. I've witnessed this pattern too, he admitted. I benefited from being the oldest son, so I never said anything but Stella's right. The disparity in how you've treated your children has been obvious and hurtful. My father's face registered shock at this betrayal from his favored son. This family discussion is over. Michael, we will need to review these documents privately. The documents are in order, Richard, Michael replied firmly. Ruth's wishes will be carried out as written. Any further attempt to interfere would force me to take this matter to court, which I don't believe would serve anyone's interests. As we left the office, the family fracture was complete. My parents and Amanda walked ahead, a tight unit as always, while James, Marcus, and I followed at a distance. The inheritance had simply exposed what had always existed beneath the surface, a fundamental imbalance in how I was valued within my own family. For what it's worth, James said quietly as we reached our cars, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. It was long overdue. His words, unexpected and sincere, brought fresh tears to my eyes. Perhaps something new and more authentic could emerge from this painful rupture, at least between some members of our family. In the weeks following the will reading, the full impact of the confrontation rippled through every aspect of family relationships. My parents launched a campaign of emotional manipulation, alternating between angry accusations and guilt-inducing pleas. Their calls and texts arrived at all hours, each message designed to make me question my decision to stand firm. Your grandmother would be heartbroken to see you tearing the family apart over money, my mother texted one morning. Your sister is devastated by your selfishness, came another message that evening. I saved each communication without responding, creating a record of their attempts to pressure me, while giving myself space to process my emotions. Marcus acted as a buffer screening calls when I needed breaks from the constant onslaught. Amanda took her grievances to social media posting vague, but pointed comments about toxic family members who only care about money. Several extended family members, only hearing her side of the story, reached out to express their disappointment in me. The narrative she crafted painted me as a money-hungry villain who had manipulated my elderly grandmother against my vulnerable sister. The isolation would have been unbearable without my support system. Marcus never wavered in his support, reminding me daily that standing up for myself was not selfish, but necessary. Jasmine and Thomas rallied around us, providing distraction through dinners and movie nights when the family pressure became too intense. James emerged as an unexpected ally, running interference with extended family and correcting the false narrative Amanda was spreading. "I was there," he would tell them firmly. "What Stella is saying is the truth." His support meant more than I could express, after years of feeling like an outsider in my own family. Having my brother acknowledge the reality of our family dynamics validated experiences I had questioned for decades. The emotional toll affected my professional life as well. Concentrating on clients' financial needs became challenging when my own family situation was in such turmoil. My supervisor noticed my distraction and gently suggested I might benefit from the company's employee assistance program, which included counseling services. Those weekly therapy sessions became a lifeline. Dr. Lawson helped me untangle the complex emotions surrounding not just the inheritance issue, but the lifetime of family dynamics that had culminated in this crisis. "What you're describing is a common pattern in family systems," she explained during one particularly illuminating session. "The golden child versus the scapegoat dynamic often persists into adulthood, especially when parents are unwilling to acknowledge the imbalance. Understanding the pattern intellectually helped me process it emotionally, though the pain of being the family scapegoat remained acute. I began to recognize that my parents' behavior reflected their own insecurities and limitations, not my worth as a person or daughter. 3 months after the confrontation, my parents finally offered what passed for an apology in their world, a carefully worded message that acknowledged they might have created a misunderstanding about the inheritance without taking real responsibility for their attempted deception. "We only wanted what was best for the family as a whole," my father said during an uncomfortable phone call. "Perhaps we should have discussed it with you directly." It wasn't a genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing, but it was as close as they would likely come. I accepted it with the same measured response, neither rejecting the olive branch nor pretending it erased the harm done. Amanda remained hostile, refusing any contact unless I made things right by voluntarily giving her a portion of my inheritance. I held firm, recognizing that appeasing her would only reinforce the unhealthy pattern our parents had established. When the estate was finally settled legally, I made a decision that felt like the perfect tribute to Grandma Ruth. I used a portion of the inheritance to establish the Ruth Griffin Financial Literacy Foundation, dedicated to helping young women learn to manage their finances independently. The foundation offered scholarships, workshops, and mentoring programs specifically targeting first-generation college students from limited financial backgrounds. The first holiday season after Grandma Ruth's passing was painful in new ways. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't join the family gathering, choosing, instead, to spend Christmas with Marcus and our chosen family of close friends. The absence of obligation to perform the role of grateful second-best daughter felt both liberating and disorienting. In January, James called with news that he had discovered a collection of journals in a box of Grandma Ruth's papers his wife had been helping organize. "I think you should have these," he said when we met for coffee. "They go back decades, and there's a lot about the family in them, about you especially." Reading Grandma Ruth's journals over the following weeks provided insight into patterns I had only partially understood. She wrote candidly about her own relationship with my father, noting his tendency to play favorites even in childhood. She documented her concerns as she watched him replicate those patterns with his own children, particularly his treatment of me versus Amanda. Watched Richard dismiss Stella's scholarship news today. Read one entry from my high school years. The child achieves remarkable things despite the lack of recognition. I see so much of myself in her determination. We'll speak with her privately to ensure she knows her value. The journals revealed that my grandmother had seen and understood far more than she had ever directly expressed. She had been my silent advocate working behind the scenes to counter the impact of my parents' favoritism, while respecting the complex boundaries of intergenerational relationships. Most surprisingly, I discovered that Grandma Ruth had experienced similar treatment in her own family, overlooked in favor of her brother, in ways that echoed my own experience. The generational pattern was clearer than ever, making my parents' behavior more comprehensible, if not more excusable. This knowledge didn't erase the hurt, but it helped place it in a larger context. The inheritance dispute had forced a painful reckoning with family dynamics that had shaped my entire life. Though the confrontation had fractured relationships, it had also created space for more authentic connections based on truth rather than obligatory roles. 6 months after Grandma Ruth's passing, I could finally see that her greatest legacy wasn't the financial inheritance she had protected for me, but the example she had set of quiet strength, personal dignity, and the courage to define success on her own terms. In honoring her wishes, I had finally fully embraced the most important lesson she had taught me. My worth was inherent, regardless of whether my family could recognize it. As spring blossomed around our Boston home, I found myself settling into a new normal that felt increasingly authentic. The immediate crisis of the inheritance had passed, but its impact continued to reshape my understanding of family and self-worth in profound and ultimately healing ways. My therapist had encouraged me to establish clear boundaries with my parents, based on current behavior rather than past patterns. Healthy boundaries aren't punishment, Dr. Lawson explained. They're protection that allows for relationship on new, more equal terms. Following her guidance, I drafted an email to my parents outlining what kind of contact I was open to and what behaviors I would no longer tolerate. The process was excruciating, but necessary, forcing me to articulate expectations I had previously been afraid to voice. I am open to rebuilding our relationship, I wrote, but only on terms that include mutual respect and acknowledgement of past patterns. I will not participate in conversations that diminish my choices or compare me unfavorably to my siblings. I will not accept last-minute cancellations or half-hearted inclusion in family events. My father's initial response was predictably defensive, but over time, a cautious new pattern of communication emerged. Our conversations remained somewhat stilted, but for the first time, I wasn't contorting myself to earn approval that never came. The Ruth Griffin Financial Literacy Foundation quickly became my passion project, absorbing the energy I had previously spent seeking parental validation. We launched with a series of weekend workshops for high school girls from underserved communities, teaching practical financial skills and long-term planning. Watching these young women grasp concepts that would help them build independent futures brought a sense of purpose that transcended my personal family drama. Many reminded me of myself at that age, hungry for knowledge and determined to create security on their own terms. "You've created something really beautiful here," Marcus observed after our third successful workshop. "Something that turns pain into purpose." His words captured exactly what the foundation represented for me, a transformation of Grandma Ruth's legacy and my own experiences into something that could benefit others facing similar challenges. Around this time, James and I began to develop a relationship independent of our parents for the first time in our adult lives. Though he had always been aligned with our father professionally, the inheritance confrontation had forced him to recognize patterns he had previously ignored. Over dinner one evening, he made a confession that stunned me. "I always knew they treated you differently," he admitted, staring into his glass. "But I benefited from their approval, so I never said anything." "I'm sorry, Stella." His acknowledgement of what I had experienced for decades brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you for saying that," I managed. "It means more than you know." "The irony," he continued with a sad smile, "is that their approval came with impossibly high expectations. The golden child role has its own prison." For the first time, I glimpsed the pressure he had lived under as the designated success story of the family. While my struggle had been for recognition, his had been against crushing expectations. Different burdens, but burdens nonetheless. This new understanding deepened our sibling bond in unexpected ways. We began a tradition of monthly dinners, sometimes with our spouses, sometimes just the two of us, creating the adult sibling relationship we had never had the chance to develop under the shadow of our parents' favoritism. My relationship with Amanda remained fractured. She continued to blame me for hoarding the inheritance, refusing to acknowledge her role in the attempted manipulation. Occasional family events where we both attended were tense affairs with Amanda, either ignoring me completely or making passive-aggressive comments designed to provoke a reaction. I learned to respond with calm detachment, refusing to be drawn into the familiar drama. "I understand you're still upset," became my standard response. "I'm open to talking when you're ready to discuss this honestly." That offer remained untaken as Amanda continued her pattern of professional instability, now without the unlimited safety net our parents had previously provided. Without Grandma Ruth's inheritance to fund her latest venture, she was forced to develop more realistic plans and actually follow through on commitments, a development that would likely benefit her in the long run, though she couldn't see it yet. My parents' relationships with their children evolved in different ways following the confrontation. My father, always more comfortable with practical matters than emotional ones, initiated a conversation about my career that represented a significant shift in our dynamic. "The foundation work you're doing," he said awkwardly during a rare one-on-one lunch. "It's impressive, Stella. Very strategic use of the capital." It wasn't a direct acknowledgement of past favoritism or the inheritance manipulation, but coming from my father, this professional recognition was as close to an apology as I was likely to receive. My mother struggled more visibly with the new boundaries I had established. After decades of managing family relationships, to maintain a specific image, she found herself unable to control the narrative or smooth over conflicts as she once had. "I just want my family back the way it was," she lamented during a tearful phone call. "I don't," I replied honestly. "The way it was didn't work for me, Mom. I need relationships based on who I actually am, not who you need me to be." Her silence spoke volumes about the challenge this presented to her understanding of family. For my mother, family meant presenting a united front regardless of underlying issues. The authentic, but sometimes messy relationships I now insisted on contradicted everything she believed about proper family functioning. In the midst of this family recalibration, Marcus and I received unexpected news that added a new dimension to our understanding of family legacy. After 2 years of not actively preventing pregnancy, but not pursuing fertility treatments, either we discovered we were expecting our first child. The news brought immediate joy, followed by complex emotions, as I considered what kind of parent I wanted to be. Would I unconsciously replicate the patterns I had experienced? How could I ensure that each child, if we had more than one, felt equally valued and seen? "You're already asking these questions," Marcus pointed out when I shared my fears. "That awareness is the first step to breaking the pattern." I began journaling my thoughts on parenthood, processing my experiences as a daughter, to better understand the kind of mother I wanted to become. Grandma Ruth's journals became a guidebook of sorts, offering wisdom on loving children for who they are, rather than what they achieve. When we shared the pregnancy news with my parents, their genuine excitement offered a glimpse of what might be possible in this new chapter of our family story. My mother immediately began planning a baby shower, channeling her need to manage family events into something positive for once. "Just remember," Marcus whispered after an overwhelming call with my enthusiastic mother, "we set the boundaries now. This is our child, our rules." His reminder grounded me in the knowledge that while I couldn't control how my parents behaved, I could control how much access they had to my life and my child. That power shifted the dynamic in fundamental ways I was still learning to navigate. As my pregnancy progressed, I continued building my chosen family network, deepening friendships that provided the unconditional support I had rarely experienced in my biological family. Jasmine threw an intimate gender reveal party that felt more meaningful than any elaborate family function, celebrating our baby girl with genuine joy, free from comparison or condition. 6 months into my pregnancy, James suggested a family gathering at his home with a professional mediator present, someone who could help facilitate more productive communication among all family members. "We're about to add a new generation to this family," he pointed out. "It might be worth trying to establish healthier patterns before your daughter arrives." The suggestion was both terrifying and appealing. The thought of confronting family dynamics directly with professional support offered the possibility of real change, but it also risked reopening wounds that were still healing. After discussing it extensively with Marcus and Dr. Lawson, I agreed to the session with specific conditions about topics and participation. To my surprise, my parents consented as well, perhaps recognizing that their relationship with their grandchild would depend on rebuilding trust with me. The mediated family conversation was uncomfortable but productive, creating space for emotions and perspectives that had never been openly acknowledged in our family. No single session could resolve decades of established patterns, but it represented a beginning, a willingness to at least see the dysfunction that had shaped our relationships. Amanda declined to participate, but even her absence was informative, highlighting her continued resistance to any narrative that didn't center her needs and feelings. As my due date approached, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past year. Grandma Ruth's passing had catalyzed a painful but necessary confrontation with family patterns I had endured, rather than challenged for most of my life. The inheritance she left me extended far beyond financial resources, encompassing lessons about self-worth, boundary setting, and the courage to demand respectful treatment. I thought often about forgiveness, not as a gift to those who had hurt me, but as a release for myself. Forgiveness didn't require reconciliation on their terms, or pretending the harm hadn't occurred. It meant acknowledging what had happened, feeling the appropriate emotions, and choosing not to let those experiences determine my future happiness. The nursery Marcus and I prepared for our daughter became a physical manifestation of this philosophy. We filled it with books that celebrated uniqueness, photographs of strong women, including Grandma Ruth, and a framed quote that read, "Your worth is inherent, not earned." These words would be among the first our daughter would see each morning, a daily reminder of what had taken me decades to fully understand. She would grow up knowing that she was valued simply for being herself, her worth never tied to achievement comparison or compliance with others' expectations. As I placed Grandma Ruth's restored antique rocking chair in the corner of the nursery, I felt her presence as strongly as if she were still physically with me. The patterns of favoritism and conditional love that had marked my childhood would end with me. In choosing to see and value myself despite my parents' inability to do so, I had freed myself to build a family based on acceptance rather than performance. The journey toward healing remained ongoing, the relationships with my parents and siblings still evolving in ways I couldn't fully predict. But standing in my daughter's nursery, one hand resting on my growing belly, I knew with certainty that Grandma Ruth's true legacy lived on in the wisdom she had shared and the example she had set. Family could be chosen as well as born. Worth was inherent rather than earned. And sometimes, standing firm in the face of familiar patterns was the most loving choice, not just for yourself, but for generations to come. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who treated you unfairly? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. This journey has taught me that recognizing your worth isn't selfish, it's essential. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share with someone who might need to hear that they deserve to be valued. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the most important inheritance isn't money, but the courage to break harmful patterns. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.